might have heard of cupping. It's becoming a little bit more popular nowadays. But it's been around again for a long time. Before glass, we had bamboo cups. Basically the process of cupping is, as you can see in the picture, a cotton ball is lit on fire. It's usually saturated in high volatile alcohol, so 99.9% alcohol ideally, placed in and out of the cup, and then the cup is placed on you. You're dealing with a high and low pressure area. High moves to low, you create a vacuum, boom, it's on your body and pulling up. Sensation that is pretty hard to explain until you actually experience it. It's similar somewhat to a deep tissue massage, but it's in the opposite direction. So it's interesting. Where do I like using cupping? Cupping, I think, is an amazing practice that I really like to use after I've done needling. So if you think of needling the tissue wherever the problem is, and whatever the problem is, what I'm doing with cupping then is, the cupping is drawing in blood. Blood is full of the nutrients, the minerals that you need to repair the tissue. So the needle has in fact caused microscopic amounts of trauma. Maybe it released the tissue. Maybe it has to do something, neurologically again. We're replenishing the tissue with blood. Yeah.
What about hot rocks?
Hot rocks. I've experienced hot rocks. It's not anything that I do. Where you could benefit from a hot rock therapy would be more similar to a hydrotherapy. So hot on for say 5 minutes, something cold on the same location for say 30 seconds. That variability again is going to create a high-low pressure area. So the hot is opening and it's expanding, the cold is then contracting, you're drawing blood flow specific to those regions. You're doing that for say 15 minutes or so, always finishing with the cold, because the cold's going to shrink and lock everything in, right? That's that in energy. Does that make sense? Yeah?
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So the other neat thing actually with cupping, if anybody's familiar with muscle tissue and fascia, is when we can grab onto it and sort of pull and separate those layers. This is a fantastic technique, even just moving body limbs while the cup's on at the time. It can be a strong sensation while it's happening, but it's fantastic at really releasing fascia, muscle tissue, and increasing range of motion. This is another form or way of cupping. Not my preferred, but it's a really easy way of doing it. And again, if somebody's really sensitive, it's a great way to sort of vary the amount of suction that's in the cup. And then silicone cupping is fantastic and something that I definitely recommend to a lot of my patients. It's something that you can do at home. It's a great way to sort of connect with what's going on with your body. It's cheap, they're small, you can take them with you when you travel. Again, it's just an awesome complementary opportunity for yourself to heal. Examples of cupping then, this is what it looks like. If you look up, yeah, you can see that pretty clearly. So the patient in the top right has obviously got some back stuff going on. And there's a little bit of stuff going on here, but it's definitely not as bad as what's going on with the shoulder. And you can see that through the indication of how dark it is. So in traditional Chinese medicine, we're relating this to being qi and blood stasis. There's lack of movement there. If you think of what's going on in the tissue related to a garden hose, you got a garden hose that's open, and then you think of like compressing that garden hose, relate this to your muscle tissue tension. There's going to be limited flow then through your vascular system. So blood's getting trapped in here and it's not able to go out, and that's why you're getting a darker mark. Now, can you get a dark mark from just leaving the cup on there for a long period of time? Absolutely. Yeah. That's totally a possibility. But you can see this as a practitioner, and that's the beauty of using the glass as well. I can see how dark that tissue is right away. I can feel it and pull it and tug it, and I know what's going on beneath it. And if that's definitely like a target region or something that we need to spend a little bit more time on. How long do the marks last? Anywhere from 2 to 2 weeks. They're not painful, although they look painful. They won't be sore afterwards. You might be a little sore through the tissues. We're releasing that afterwards, but the marks themselves aren't like your trauma-type bruise. If you look at the patient again down here, it looks like she's got some stuff again going on in the shoulders, which is very common. We get some stuff maybe again on the left side, and then possibly the levator scap going up into the neck. But you can see over here too, which is very subtle. I don't know if you can see it a little bit. So there's been some cupping that's done on the right side too, but not necessarily a problem area. This could also be the result of cupping that had been done a few days prior, so the bruises have already faded. Cupping was made famous probably by Michael Phelps, and it's then not surprising that you can see all through his shoulders. Being a swimmer, there's a lot of stuff going on there. And this is also more common with people that are more hypertrophic. Their muscles are more developed, everything's tight, right?
He's doing the butterfly.
What's that? Sorry?
He's doing the butterfly.
He is doing the butterfly.
Looks like he's been attacked by a toilet.
Alright, this one again looks terrible, and it doesn't feel great when it's happening. This is Gua Sha. Gua Sha is a scraping method used usually with a smooth edge tool. Usually from olden days it was a honed jade, buffalo horn, and basically the tissue is scraped in one direction, usually along, again, muscle tissue, fibers that are associated with different muscle directions, but also in the traditional Chinese medicine patterns. If you've ever experienced Graston from a Western medical standpoint, it's basically the same thing. Again, it doesn't feel good when it's happening. It does feel good afterwards. The marks look worse than they actually are. It's been used for a variety of different things. One, we would use this to release heat, so if somebody's got a fever, it's a possibility to use something like this. It increases the circulation. Again, you're creating basically microscopic abrasions to the tissue, which is generating the regrowth of your vascular system, which is then in turn improving your immune system. Tuina is a form of massage that, again, is not something that you'd really go for a relaxing massage. It's working a lot with the muscle tissue, the fascia. We've got some skin rolling going on over here, which can be really good, especially if you've got previous traumas, surgical scars, something like that. You've got some pressure points, so tissue is pressed along, again, acupuncture points along the meridian. And then we've got some tapoment, which is a really nice way to end after you've experienced any of these other modalities. So, of course, can acupuncture help neuropathy? And the answer is yes. Every patient is, like we discussed earlier, you're different. So your protocol is not determined by your diagnosis, but all of the other signs and symptoms that are present that you're dealing with, that you're experiencing, no matter how weird or odd or insignificant they are, they're all information that a traditional Chinese medicine practitioner can utilize to help determine your pattern and ideally help benefit you. The amount of time that it takes to recover, again, just repeating myself here, but your general state of health, your age, to the extent of what the pathology is that you're dealing with, and again, how long you've been dealing with this. Can you expect a total recovery? Case by case. Again, there are definitely cases that elude both Western and Eastern medicine, but I found, at least anyways, with this process, you can at least get some benefit, some relief through it. Can you combine it with other forms of medicine? 100%, and I totally encourage it. There's no such thing as one modality or one practice that is good for everything. It's the same thing with food. There isn't anything that exists that I'm aware of that is good for everything, so it's great to change it up. And I mean, that could be even changing up practitioners. That could be doing acupuncture with physiotherapy, with chiro, with massage, with naturopath, with your GP. I mean, all of these things are great to combine, and I think it's important to approach problems with all kinds of different ideas of how to tackle these problems. You may run into issues if you're doing, if you're on some sort of medication and you want to do the herbal route. Again, you'll have to consult with your Western practitioner as to, if it's something that you can and can't do. Sometimes there are negative side effects from medications. Sometimes some of the herbal supplements will just neutralize your medication, so it's important to stay in contact with them. Likewise too then with Western medicine, I think we're extremely lucky to have it. Sometimes though, however, we get a little bit too excited and we jump the gun. We go for a little bit more aggressive treatments, surgery sometimes being one of them, without considering or at least trying some of these more subtle therapies, being dietary therapy, being even like simple things like massage. You might need to consider a life change. I'm an example of that. I was in aviation and I saw the pattern that was to be me, and I had to break it. So I changed my career into something like this where I could provide my experiences that I've had and help people. So it doesn't really matter how old you are, it's still something that you can do. You just gotta make the choice. Consider the traditional Chinese medicine practitioner as the gardener. So the purpose then is more regulating homeostasis, so balance within the body. Ideally then when you have some sort of pathology that's going at you, you nip it before it turns into something more sinister. And then consider the Western practitioner as the mechanic. They're amazing at mending broken bones, replacing worn joints, and dealing with trauma or infections. I think we're so lucky to have it. So patients with chronic illness can definitely benefit from combining both TCM and Western principles for sure. I guess the only real difference that you'd find between the two, and Western medicine is definitely coming if you start following sort of the functional medicine movement, but traditional Chinese medicine focus has been on not just treating your symptoms that you're feeling, but also trying to source why you have these symptoms. So what's the root cause of that? And again, that can be environmental. Environmental can be the job that you do. Environmental can be the place that you live in your head. What are the patterns that you're repeating here, and why are you continuing to have these issues? So our purpose is really to try and break that so that you don't have these issues in the future. Scientific evidence, people are always interested in that. I think for traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture, there absolutely is a ton of evidence out there. Great resource would be evidence-based acupuncture. Condensed, the entire literature base was summarized in 2010 through a meta-analysis in the Australian Department of Veteran Affairs. It was then reviewed again in 2014 by the US Department of Veterinary Affairs, and then again in 2017 by John McDonald and Stephen Jans, who wrote the webpage. I also utilize the National Center for Biotechnology Information, ncbi.com. Amazing resource for all kinds of different studies out there. And I would definitely strongly encourage that you go and you do your own research. But just keep an open mind. Don't form an opinion based off of one study, and don't look for studies only to support your opinion. If you're of a specific opinion, try to disprove it. Look for a lot of stuff out there to see, if it is a thing. If it isn't, just really try and inform yourself. Take into account, how is the study done? Who did the study? Is it human-based? Is it based off of a worm? Is it based off of animals? It's common. It's totally as common. So you want to base, how you change your dietary protocols off of, what you saw with, food worms. Maybe it has some value. Maybe it has some weight, but just be skeptical with stuff like that. If you're looking for additional resources, great books, I would say, if you want to take it from more of a Western perspective, The Spark of the Machine, fantastic, written by Dr. Danley Keown. Pretty easy read, descriptive, again, good in balancing both Western and Eastern principles. And then more from a TCM traditional Chinese medicine perspective, the web that has no weaver, and then Between Heaven and Earth, which has also got some interesting worksheets in it. Websites, personal plug for myself. It's a growing resource. Definitely not where I want it to be, but it's saying that it probably never will be. The more information, the better. Yin Yang House is a little bit tricky to navigate, but it's awesome at theory and then pathology. SacredLotus.com, theory-based webpage. The Shenggong, great theory, but also combining the dietary therapy, awesome. American Dragon, which I pulled some of the herbal information from, is stunning for traditional Chinese medicine pathology, whether you're looking at individual herbs or the formulas. And then, as we talked right in the beginning, Acupuncture Alberta for the regulatory body here.